Hello and welcome to MJ's Money Podcast, where we explore all the things you need to enjoy thriving success and financial freedom, all with the goal to help you achieve the lifestyle of your dreams. Today, it gives me great joy to welcome Rishi Patel from Selling in Alignment. Rishi is the coach of coaches, one of the UK's absolute gems in the entrepreneurial and business coaching landscapes. He has built, scaled, and exited a coaching business and now works with other coaches to enable them to do the same. Rishi, welcome. It is so fantastic to have you here on the show.
Stephen, I've been looking forward to this since you dropped me the email, and it's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to just tapping into the money mindset, the stuff the podcast is around, and just going really deep and just delivering a bunch of value.
Awesome. Rishi, maybe we'll start. If you can tell us a little bit about your journey, because what a fascinating journey you've had. Obviously, I've known you for a little while, so I've heard it, but if I can get it from your own words, just tell us about the journey you've been on that led you into the space you're in today.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been an interesting one, Stephen, to say the least. People see me today as this coach that works with coaches, consultants to help them to price package £30,000, $50,000 top end coaching products. And my journey really started from a complete lack of self-worth. All the way back in the playground, I was really short for my age group. And my parents would drop me to the playground, and around 15 minutes before school started, these kids would come into the playground. They pushed me around a little bit, and I created this entire story that I was bullied. And at the time, being 7, 8 years old, that's what I really felt was going on with me. I felt like the victim. And I was really short for the age group. And so, in fact, in my entire age group, I was the shortest in the class. Right. And so I just lacked that confidence, that self-esteem. I think these kids derived a lot of joy from just pushing me around in the playground. And that's really where that journey started. And you can
place to start.
Exactly, right? And you can imagine as a kid what that must be like. And now I really hold space for other kids who, feel like they're getting bullied, because I can really relate to what they're going through. And, you're talking about what I do today around creating, massive top end coaching programs and pricing and packaging coaches at the level that they need to be priced at. That it just never started that way. And these kids would push me around the playground. I'd get bullied, and that would be how the day would start. And that happened all the way through to college. To be honest, I was still very short for my age group, and I just feel like I'd always been. And I found it hard to make friends. And so because I found it hard to make friends, I was people pleasing, right? I would say yes to everything and anything. And it was just stemming from this unresolved trauma of being pushed around in the playground. Like this kid that really wanted to make friends, wanted to fit in, wanted to feel like he belonged, right? Was just, in that space of, I'll just say yes to everything. And I took that through to adulthood. And where did that end up? That ended up with me having some severe health conditions. I went through a period of depression, and it was just really difficult. And I started my own coaching business, worked with a business partner. And as you said on the introduction, I built that, and I grew that, and I scaled it, and I exited. But before all of that happened, we actually massively underpriced our offering, right? Massively. And again, for me, my responsibility in the organization was around sales, around managing a sales team, around the events, around everything geared around creating the revenue for the business. And we basically pushed that, but I would just underprice the product. We were running a 12-month coaching program with one-to-one coaching inside of there for £2,000. And that's around about 2,500 US dollars. And it just didn't work. And so I went through this period I did that for 6-7 years before I hit this massive amount of clients that we were serving at a very low price point. I barely had enough money to pay myself and my business partner cover the expenses. And it was tough. And so eventually I went through this whole phase around 2018 of deep depression. I was diagnosed with depression. I knew that that was happening because I actually couldn't physically get out of bed. I had to sleep 16 hours a day. And it was a real low in my life. Like, I really felt that there was no way out of this. And sleeping 16 hours a day, getting up for basic functions like eating, bathroom function, and going back to bed, because I was just so drained from working, running around, doing crazy things, and just kind of on cycle and repeat. Had no concept of looking after my own health and wellness. And it just went on and on like that. And then we just kind of got to this point where we made a decision. So myself and my business partner sat down and we said, look, you know what? We're not pricing this business correctly. Like, we need to change things up. And so the game-changing moment came when I really tapped into my background, right? And now, taking it back a couple of steps, what happened is, when I was being bullied in school, my father saw that this was happening and he said to me, you know, you need to go to martial arts classes. He was a martial artist himself. He studied karate. So he looked for me for a martial arts instructor. And that was the seed that really started to have me step into a power of my own, right? My own self-worth. So I did that for a few years, and then I went back to it. And so I drew from that confidence that I derived as a martial artist, right? I drew from that, and I took the lessons that I learned from martial arts, and I really applied that into modern day business. And I said, okay, look, you know, we got to step into this confidence, this new level of power where we create a brand new offering. And so that's exactly what we did. We created a really high value, high end coaching program, which was the £25,000 price point. And we actually started to put that out there in front of customers. And that was scary, right? But we packaged it in such a way where we made it a great offer and they were going to get great value from it. And that's really how everything took off. And so then at that point, I was able to really grow that business. We scaled it. We brought a team on board. We had an office pre-COVID. We were employing staff. And then in 2020, I got to exit that business. So that's really where I started.
Yeah. It was interesting when you're going along, talking about the new product you built there. You talked about building a high value, high end, I think you said. And there's lots of words that I've heard around that, like high ticket or yeah, I'm just trying to think, you know, there's a range of other words that I've heard around that. I can't think of off the top of my head. Why high value and high end, not other terms that you hear around the, because it's a bit different to what I've heard others say.
Absolutely. So, and that's what selling in alignment stands for, is really being different and really disrupting this market space. Because, you know, Stephen, I believe there's an evolution in consciousness taking place. Okay. And people are really tapping into a new level of energy, new level of awareness. And so this term, high ticket, you won't see associated with selling in alignment at all. And the reason that we use high value, high end is because, first of all, we say high value. And so this has a very specific order to it, right? It's not high end, high value. It's high value, high end. Why? Because high value, we're reminding ourselves that we put the customer first in delivering a high amount of value. High end, because that's going to be the caliber of product and service we want to deliver. Now, if you deliver something that's high value, high end, it's naturally going to be a high price. And so this is what we call our products and services, not high ticket, because for me, high ticket just stands for what's in it for me and what's in it for my business. It doesn't talk about what the customer's going to get. And so I want to consistently remind my own subconscious mind that we're delivering a massive amount of value in this space. And we want our coaches and consultants to put their customers at the forefront. Remember that they're serving as well as selling, and serving is just a mechanism. Selling is just a mechanism for serving. And so we want to remember that by putting the customer first, by saying high value, then high end.
I love it. So, and I love that customer-centered approach, especially when you're really focusing on value for the customer. I mean, I often think that's one of the biggest things missing in businesses when I look around with many things. You know, if it's not articulating clearly what the customer gets, why would they spend with you? You know, whether that's $1 or $100,000 or $1 million. It's it's the value they get that drives the I suppose the purpose of the purchase. So I love that. How would you link that then into your big vision? What are you actually like? What's your purpose for what you're trying to do?
Yeah, great question. This is something I'm so passionate about, and Stephen, I've taken years to really refine this. What Selling in Alignment stands for is a complete revolution, a switch up in the entire space of coaching, where coaches get valued for the incredible level of service that they offer. Coaches are amazingly powerful beings who have the skill set to create a space for people to step into their greatness. And so they're just a part of this massive thing that's happening right now in society, this evolution of consciousness, where people are just really leveling up. They're connecting more and more to their values, to their purpose, to what they're all about in the world, to their personal brands. And coaches facilitate that space. And so the vision really is that coaches kind of really get clear around stepping into, hey, you know what? This is my worth, right? This is the transformation I create in the world for people. I allow them to step into their greatness, be it a promotion at work, be it they just get on better with their spouse, be it they have an amazing relationship with their children, be it they become change makers in the world to go on and create ripples through society. Coaches are the people that create these spaces. And so really the mission is seeing coaches charge their worth, having coaches package themselves in a way in which they absolutely step into ownership around that transformation. And Stephen, question, right? Why can't coaches earn as much as top-end doctors, dentists, lawyers? Like, why does the coaching profession not meet that level of income? And that's really what Selling in Alignment stands for, is having coaches really own that. And we just want to create this elite group that really gets their worth, really starts going out there and understanding the mechanics of not only just coaching and what they deliver, but really running a coaching business, which has all of these associated overheads to it, which also need to be paid around, as well as them getting paid as well for the immense amount of value that they deliver.
Yeah. I heard you once talk about a really cool perception on what that payment is, or what money is. And I'd actually wonder if you'd expand on that here, because I think that's a really great space where you were talking about money is a fuel, or I forget the exact words you use. Can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. So, it's interesting because one of the things that I see when I'm working with coaches and consultants to have them step into this new space, this new mindset, this new level of consciousness, is they really get stuck and they associate themselves with the business. And so what coaches have to get is that they are separate to the business. See, the business itself is a separate entity. And I know that it works this way across the world, right? So in the UK, for example, we have what we call Companies House. And so you set up a limited company, and that is an entity that lives, breathes, has its own consciousness in itself. And even if people in the UK are what we call sole traders, they're still registered as sole traders. That entity exists separate to them. Now, they may put their name around it and they may call it the same name as their business, and that's okay. They have to get that the business is separate from them. And so what those revenues then do is they provide the fuel for the company to run. The company needs that, right? Imagine having a newborn baby. You wouldn't deprive this newborn baby of nutrients, of supplements, of all of the stuff that it needs to grow and to, feel fulfilled and to feel loved. The company, the business, the entity needs exactly the same thing. And the way that gets represented in the world of business is through revenues. And those revenues just provide a fuel for that car to move. Where coaches and consultants I see get a little confused is they collapse themselves with the company. But the role of the coach or the consultant in that space is more than likely they're the director. And so again, on Companies House, we have a director of a company. And so if you think about the word director, it's direction. And so if you have a car, you put fuel into it, but you still need the steering wheel to provide direction. So the coach's role is really to make sure that there's fuel in the car and to provide the direction. And they shouldn't collapse this with just providing coaching services. This is one of the biggest problems that I see in the space, and it's one of the spaces where I meet coaches, is that they've collapsed it all together.
When you're talking about the biggest problems, you've been coaching for a long time now, and you've, as we talked before, you've been in that coaching space, you've scaled, you've exited, you've gone through all the challenges, those particularly early entrepreneurs, those early coaches who are, intimately, as you've shared, the frustrations they're going to be facing. What are the big pitfalls or mistakes that you've observed that they're making? Is it just pricing, or are there other key elements that they are, I suppose, doing that undermine their success?
So my entire thing is in selling in alignment. My early stage that I work with coaches is around pricing. When we solve that, we actually solve a lot of other problems by default. And so that's why I start at pricing. And having said that, there are a lot of other things that, coaches and consultants really do need to get complete clarity around. And so selling in alignment has a proprietary method. It's called Dojo Path. And it's an 8-step system where we really go in and look at the foundations of a coaching business. Now, what do we mean by foundations of a coaching business? See, coaching business, because the business is an entity in itself, it needs to have a very strong foundation, right? And this is, again, going back to the example of this newborn baby. This is where we're starting to work with this baby. Baby's growing up, and slowly, it comes into its own level of understanding, and it starts to learn its little lessons. And, we have to provide that nurturing. We have to provide the guidance, the direction for the baby. We have to teach it right from wrong. We have to start to teach this newborn, like, all of these things around life and values. And so the business needs all of these things. It needs to have a very clear mission and vision. We need to stand for something, because when coaches and consultants talk to their potential customers, their customers already start to get enrolled around something bigger that this business is playing for. And as this entire shift in consciousness takes place, it's not enough now for a business just to provide a service and that's it. We have to stand for something much bigger in the world. And that's the level of coach that I generally tend to work with, is a coach that's playing for a bigger purpose. They want to see a big change in the world. They want to have something happen in the world which is unique and powerful. And so that's one of the elements. So having a really clear mission and vision. Then they need to have a story around why they do what they do. And this, more than anything, will provide a motivational piece, not only for their clients to relate to them, to be able to understand, oh yeah, that's me, I can see myself there, but also for them to re-enroll themselves during the hardest parts of this business, because business is difficult, right? I'm, at the time of recording this interview, I'm applying for a TEDx talk. I've already been rejected for my first application, and we just have to keep going. So we just have to be okay with getting a bunch of no's and understand that we're playing for something much bigger and have that faith. And so the faith happens, and it gets created through this re-enrollment of ourselves around our own story, around why we're doing what we're doing, around our mission, around our vision. Then we need to have clarity around things like who we want to serve, right? So there's a lot of buzzwords for this, and one of them is avatar. So who is the target market that you want to serve? So we need to have clarity around that. Then we get to kind of the idea around pricing and packaging. So then we want to have, okay, clear, succinct offers in place. And when I step in front of a client, do I have a very clear way of breaking down, hey, when you come on board with me, you're going to get X, Y, and Z, and that will lead to an A, B, and C transformation, right? That's the space you now get to step into. So we need to have all of these foundational blocks around us when we're starting a business from scratch. And that's really what I saw is critical, is important. And then from this, we can then derive the business's values. And again, bear in mind the terminologies I'm using here, I'm being very, very, very intentional around. I'm saying the business, because the business is separate from me. And so we've really got to get this, right? Is that business is separate. So these are some of the, not all of, but some of the actual building blocks around how we can put a successful coaching business together from my experience of going through this process, from my business of starting this, getting it wrong, being well underpriced, being overwhelmed, and then finally scaling and exiting.
Yeah. I love that when you're talking there, you're talking about having the courage to go out and get some no's, or being unafraid of the no's. I had an old boss who's still a good friend, actually, and years and years and years ago, those of my listeners know I spent 20 years in education, but before that I worked in sales. And with him, I was selling vacuum cleaners, door-to-door sales. And it was awesome actually working with him. And if I came out from a house that was a no, he used to go, yes, you got to know, you had to be like, yes, because he was like, it's all about ratios, and he's like, it just means you're owed the yes, man, in the next house, or you're going to get 2 back to back or 3 back to back if you had a series of no's in a row. Because it's just like, you just got to do the numbers, and the ratios will always come out in the end, and trust in the numbers in there. That's
Stephen, that's really powerful. And at Selling in Alignment, we call that what you just described, sublimation. We're replacing a thought that serves us with one that doesn't. And see, because your colleague understood ratios, he was able to make that substitution. So it is truly a celebration when you get a no, because you know that no is the lead up to the eventual victory. And once you can have that intellectual sublimation process going on, that's what's going to bring you through. And it just reminds me of one of the things that we do here, which is sales sprints. So we have a weekly sales sprint where we're all just on a call together in a forum, and we just call all of our customers, right? And we have breaks every 30 minutes, and we just break down, okay, what's happened? Okay, this customer said X, Y, and Z. Okay, so what are we making that mean? And a lot of the time, Stephen, this is the issue that I see in this space of selling. Why people maybe are put off of the idea of selling is the association they have with the no. So what happens is generally people tend to collapse no with, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't have a good offer, I don't really deserve this. And then so what happens is we wrap this entire story around this no. And so every time the customer says, well, call me back, I'm not really that interested, maybe later, not right now, my wife said no, whatever it is, right? They start to wrap all of these thoughts that don't serve them around that no. And so what happens then is we create this downward spiral. And so in creating that downward spiral, it just needs to happen a few times for them people to create a neuro association with that no. So whenever they hear that, they get into that disempowering state. And so all we need to do, and this is why we at Selling in Alignment create an environment, is just create that exact environment that you just described, which is we celebrate that. We really look at, okay, we got to know, are we making that mean anything, first of all? Like, what's the meaning we're wrapping around that? Okay, we wrap this, this, and this. Okay, can we look at that objectively? Right, now can we replace that with a higher ideal? And so we really look at it from that approach that you just described, which I think is incredibly powerful.
Do you think sometimes that's driven, just what you've been describing, by a lack of belief in their own value, that they're actually in their offer or their product's value, as much as anything? Because surely, if you really believe that what you are selling is something that is going to make a powerful transformative difference for a customer, then to me, that sales process is not even about trying to sell per se. You're not trying to put pressure. You're just trying to, I suppose, relay a belief and a confidence that you've seen someone's pain, and you're confident that you have a path to see them succeed in some particular way.
Absolutely. It's all about belief, because the initial thought creates that belief, and then that creates our eventual actions, which then reinforce the thoughts that create beliefs, that create actions. And so we have this cycle. And so that's why I talk about this idea of a downward spiral. And so we can change that, we can transform that. And a lot of the time, the coaches, consultants, service providers I work with do get into this downward spiral. There is this whole idea around belief in their product and services. As soon as someone says no, what they forget are all of the transformations they've made for people, all of the amazing testimonials they've had, all of the brilliant endorsements and case studies that they've put together. And they go into this space of, hey, you know, will my clients buy? Like, if I raise my prices and truly charge my worth, you know, are my clients still going to buy, right? Do I deserve to even charge more money? Will I even be able to deliver at this higher level of value if I increase my prices? And so all of these, and then ultimately, like, this comes down to a fear of, hey, I'm scared, right? If I put my prices up, if I then charge this, you know, and my competition are only charging this down here, and I'm charging up here, am I still even going to be able to do this, right? Like, and so it is all a self-belief piece. And so there is an exact process that we can go through to just kind of change this all up. And a lot of it comes down to money mindset. And I know you talk a lot about that, right? It's about that idea of, hey, can I see myself stepping into this? And so the way we counteract that at Selling in Alignment is we look at it from a logical and an emotional perspective. So the logical perspective is, hey, you know, like, the business needs these revenues in order to sustain, in order to grow, in order to scale, in order to serve more people. The emotional perspective is really, hey, you know what? Go back and look at the qualifications that you've got to get to this point. Go back and look at all of the amazing achievements, the accolades, the awards, all of the things that you've won, the team that you've put together, the clients you've already served, the testimonials you've already had. How does that make you feel? Right? How does it make you feel when you step into the space of creating a transformation for someone? And why can't we completely thrive from that as opposed to just surviving? So it's these two perspectives of the logical and emotional, which then completely balance each other out. So we create this beautiful balance.
I love the thrive versus surviving analogy there. That's a really interesting I suppose, picture or image in my head of where you see so many, not just actually coaches, but businesses all over the world in every industry, often feeling like they're just fighting for survival rather than thriving. What actually goes into determining then how much you can charge for a service? I mean, we've just touched on one aspect, but are there other layers that come into play here? Yeah,
absolutely. So there's a few key factors here, and there's a foundation ultimately of self-belief. So the first thing we do at Selling in Alignment is we really work on that. We have to work on the being that's directing the business, right? So we talked about this idea of a director. So we have to work on the being that's directing the business. Now, once we have clarity around that, then we can really look at the factors that influence how much we can charge. And so really for me, there are three key aspects of that. And so we have a framework around this. And the three key aspects can form a triangle, if you like. So if you think about a triangle, it's got three sides. Those three sides for us are expertise, experience, and knowledge. Okay, so expertise, experience, and knowledge. Now, the triangle for some people may not be an equilateral triangle. Right? Those sides may be slightly skewed. So a triangle may look for some people like they have a lot of expertise on the ground, they've got a lot of knowledge, but they didn't have much time in the field and actually delivering. So the experience isn't there. And so sometimes it may be that they've got lots of experience, they've got loads of time on the ground, they've got a corporate background, they really know their subject area, but the expertise in that particular niche that they serve may not exist as well. And so the goal is to create that triangle to be equilateral. So to really just balance out what's not there. And once we can really nail this idea of expertise, experience, and knowledge and have that be equal, that's where we can really start to ramp our prices up. because now suddenly we have a roundedness to the way we offer what we offer.
That is so well articulated. I love that. I haven't heard it quite put like that before, but I really like the expertise, the knowledge, and what was the third one? Expertise, knowledge,
and experience.
Experience. Yeah. That's fantastic. And I think even with my own, part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is when I look back on, I've studied business, while working in education. And I'm so fascinated by it. And yet I look at that exactly as it's not an equilateral triangle. I've worked in sales. I have some experience in there, but that, feet on the ground. That's why I want to talk to so many people like yourself and just kind of learn everything I can from you, So how does the psychology then of that pricing affect then on the client side? So if they're thinking of that client's perceptions, because all that side of it there, it seems very, driven by the vehicle and the driver, but at the end of the day, we've got to articulate that value to the client. So how does that play into that side?
Absolutely. So, this is my favorite topic to talk about, Stephen, and there is an entire psychology behind pricing. There is a very clear metric. There's a very clear there's a clear set of quadrants that we can look at by way of example. And you know what I'll do is I'll share a slide. Actually, let me just pull this up, because what we're going to do is, let me just walk you through how the psychology of your potential clients actually works, right? What is happening in the mindset? Yeah, right? What's happening in the mindset of your potential client? Because it's really interesting and powerful when you literally take a step out of yourself, put yourself in the shoes of the client, and then think about it from that perspective. And a lot of people don't understand this as a psychology. So why high value, high end products and services? Why is that an advantage? It's because of pricing psychology. So what I will do is let me show you this graphic really quickly, and it will actually break it down for you in a really systematic way.
Okay.
So yes, Stephen, I'd love to show you this. This is what we call pricing psychology, and this is Selling in Alignment's view on how this actually works. And so if you think about these four sections, this quadrant, so if you think about the top left-hand box as being unknown brand, low price, and then you have unknown brand, high price. Now, the bottom left-hand corner is known brand, low price, and then finally known brand, high price. Now, we could probably think of a couple of known brands that charge a low price. So you have supermarkets, for example, you have outlets in the States, in the UK here, we have Primark, which is a budget space. Walmart in the UK is in the US, is very well known as a space where you can go into and buy things cheaply. Yep. These brands are known. People have an expectation when they walk into these brands that they're going to get a great bargain. So they are expecting a low price, and they know the brand and they trust it. Now, on the inverse to that, you have a known brand, high price, and we can think of some really great designers and all of these people that D&G, Jimmy Choo make shoes, and these designer brands that make clothing and high-end labels. Now, generally speaking, this is what you're going to find in very plush locations in the world, where you're going to have specific areas of high streets that stack these types of shops. In the UK, here in London, we have what's called Westfield London, which is one of the biggest shopping malls in Europe. And they have a very specific section called the Village. And in the Village, you're only going to get designer brands, high-end brands. So you already have an expectation. When you walk through the Village, you're going to see some beautiful looking shop fronts, some stunning designer shops, high-end products. You're going to pay a high price. Now you trust these brands. They're known brands. Now, if you think about the relationship, right, Stephen, between our brands and these known brands, we're going to fall into the category of unknown brand.
Yeah.
So then we have to make a choice. The choice that we're going to make is, hey, do we charge a low price or do we charge a high price? And of course, there's always going to be pros and cons to everything. And let's just look at some of the ideas behind this. Generally speaking, if you're an unknown brand, you're charging a low price, there's a lack of trust because it's not a known brand. Who are these guys relative to the known brands? And if you have a low price, then there's a lack of trust and a lack of perceived value.
Yes.
Now, I'm using that word and emphasizing that word intentionally. It's a low perceived value. Now, your value may be astronomical. What you deliver as a coach, consultant, service provider is going to be superb. And you're charging a low price. So the perception that your potential client is getting is, hey, like there must be something wrong with this because they're charging next to nothing. Well, why are they doing this? And it detriments the trust.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're a customer and you're looking for coaching, you're looking for expertise, and if you go, gee, this guy's really cheap, am I going to get the actual results that I'm looking for here? That perception of value becomes very low.
Exactly. That's the exact point. And this is the psychology of what is happening in your potential client if you're charging low prices. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a low price product. I'm not saying we shouldn't have low price services. I'm not saying that low price is bad. What I'm saying here very clearly is that this is a psychology in pricing, where if you are unknown brand and you're charging a low price, generally what's happening in the mind of the client, and they may not even be able to articulate it, it's happening at such a deep-rooted subliminal level where they're having this thing going on where there's something wrong with this in essence when there may not be. Now, on the inverse to that, as an unknown brand charging a high price, you have a high perceived value. And again, I'm using that word intentionally, perceived, because it's all perceptions. What pricing creates are perceptions. And as coaches, consultants, service providers providing an ethical service, providing a good quality service, we really have to ask ourselves, do we want to fall into unknown brand low price or do we want to fall into unknown brand high price? Because we are going to fall into one of these categories. And so we have to make a conscious choice. And so it is much easier, and here's the kicker, it is actually much easier to create sales and revenues when you have a high value, high end offering. Why? Because the perception of what you do is automatically greater. People are already thinking in their psyche, this must be good because they're charging this. And generally speaking, when I've looked in the industry, this is what they're charging. I must be getting something different here. And just having that edge alone, combined with a good skill and be able to articulate your pricing and your offering and the way you've packaged yourself, that will massively help to create more sales in a business.
What about the perception that, Rishi, that I know some people have when they're pricing products? And I know I've looked at this myself over the years in different things where people think if I price it lower, I'll get more customers and overall make more money, as though it makes it more accessible to more people. How would you deal with that kind of, I suppose, perception from a pricing point from the owner and the entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So, as I said, there's no right and wrong. And really what this comes down to for me is what the business wants to achieve. Like, what are the business's goals? Does it want to serve a very large number of customers and reach a massive number of customers? Or does it really want to work with a smaller number of customers and just go very deep and create bigger transformations, right? And do, in essence, less, but still earn more. And so again, there's no right or wrong for this. Now, it's fine to want to work with many, many customers, charge a lower price point, and have scale that way. That's absolutely possible. What we have to also then understand is that comes with much more of an administrative overhead. You're now dealing with more customers. You have more customer service you need to offer. You have more administrative things, payments failing on a monthly basis. You have so much more to deal with. And you've also then created a precedent at the early level to say that, hey, I just charged this. So now to go from that to charging something high value, high end, it's really going to interrupt the flow of what's been created already as a perception, right? Because your customers then will struggle to justify, hey, you know, why I'm paying just next to nothing here and I'm getting some value. Like if I'm now being asked to pay 20 or 30 times that amount, it doesn't really seem worth it. And I'm happy where I am here. So you're also going to have that as well. Now, having said that, of course, there are pros to going low price and providing services to customers at that level, which is that you get people to get to know you, they create an element of trust there, and then you can bring them on a journey with you. And at the same time, that's why it comes down to the overall objective. And generally speaking, the service providers that I worked with already have an established brand. They've already served customers at that level. It hasn't really worked because they've taken way too many customers on. They're now at capacity. They're making next to nothing. And it's like, oh, I've hit a glass ceiling. And so this is the whole idea of repricing and packaging their offering so that we can scale, discover, and live a greater purpose, create a bigger impact with a smaller number of clients. And so if that is an objective, to work with a smaller number of clients, but create big transformation, massive changes, and be a contribution, create more time, energy, resources for yourself, you have to have that offering at the top end.
I love that you're talking about that capacity. And I suspect actually a lot of people who think like I was floated at the beginning there, I was curious to see what you said, but where they think I can serve a lot of people, probably are a little bit unrealistic about what their capacity actually is, and think they're going to somehow, you know, serve the numbers that say Facebook serves in a coaching business, or you know, it's probably a little bit unrealistic, or just maybe naivety on that approach. But
yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, and this is exactly where I was, right? I wanted to, and this is why in my prior coaching business, Master the Markets, we actually created this £2,000 coaching program, and we tried to bring as many people onto that because our thinking was, well, you know, we only need to serve a few hundred customers a year in order to be able to get a superb business and great revenues. And what we didn't understand is even when we got to 50 or 60 customers, we were overwhelmed, we're slammed, right? With the amount of administration, with the amount of chasing people for the payment plan that they'd agreed to, and then people dropping off of that payment plan, and then the customer service, and then the occasional complaint that would come in about, oh, you know, this is why I was expecting this, and you delivered this, and it's all of this other stuff that comes up in the space that coaches, consultants, service providers don't really see as a possibility. And then that becomes very overwhelming. And so you need to have incredible systems, processes, and people in place to be able to handle that type of an infrastructure. It is much more efficient for a coach to work with 6 or 7 customers a year, create a very high value, high-end product or service at the 25K price point, and scale a business that way, because then that really gives options. That gives people the revenues to be able to then create team, create processes, take a good salary out for themselves, really go to town on what they want to create next. If it's serving more customers, if it's maybe just living their purpose around spending more time with their children or doing some community work or something like that. So that's the selling in alignment approach to that.
I love it. How are you getting your clients? How are you actually getting out there and getting known? I mean, I know you're pretty big on some LinkedIn communities, and I know I watch your Intention Monday pretty regularly myself. So what are you doing to get these high-end clients that are coming in and working with you?
It's a great question. And so what this comes down to is a marketing piece. And so there's several layers to this. The first one is we need to create a commitment inside ourselves. So I'm a really big believer that a lot of the work is done at the foundational level. And the foundational level is not any of the actual mechanics or tactics that we use on the ground for things like what we call marketing, right? So, you know, a lot of people out there in the space are going to talk about things like sales funnels and lead magnets and all of these types of things. And so that does play a role. And for me, it starts at a much more subtle level than that, which is how we're showing up in the world or who we're being. And so if we're committed ourselves first by making a statement in the world to say, hey, you know what? I have a 12K offering, right? I have a $12,000 offering, and that's what I'm going to start to put out there. That in itself raises our vibration. And I genuinely believe that calls in a different caliber of clients. So I believe it starts with a statement to the world to say, hey, this is who I'm being, right? I'm going to offer a high value, high end product. Then we need to be out there in the world, and we need to be very consistent in our approach. So I'm generally very consistent on LinkedIn. I'll post a minimum of 3 times a week. Done that for the past year or so. My Intention Monday that you just mentioned is also a year old at the time of making this recording. So that happens every single Monday. It's a 10-minute live that I do at 12 noon British Standard Time. And things like that, what they do is they may not necessarily generate leads straight away. What they do generate is a perception of around your potential client that, hey, this guy's consistent. I can trust this guy to show up, right? And so what's happening is they're creating a perception of your brand. And so now if I talk to anyone, the kind of feedback that I get is, yes, Rishi Patel's a ball of energy, very inspiring, always positive, you know, passionate. And so that's been created over a period of time in the way that I show up consistently in that exact way. And so what we're doing there is creating a perception. Now, once we've done that, once we create the foundation of the statement that where we are and who we're being for the world, then we've created that perception of consistency because we are consistent and people are getting that from us. Then we go out and post on things like LinkedIn. And so what we need to do is look at where are our target markets. So for me, I don't post on Facebook, for example. While there's plenty of opportunity on Facebook and there's a good caliber of client, you're going to get people spending money. It's great. I want to appeal more to my high-end business coaches, my high-end life coaches, my high-end mindset coaches, health, wellness. And so these people are generally on LinkedIn. And so that's my platform of choice for that. And so I will generally post on there. And there's lots of different mechanics for how we can really work with people, because what I've realized is that while you can post on LinkedIn and be very consistent, you then have to do the work behind the scenes by just really engaging with people on the platform one-on-one and just getting into their world a little bit. And as soon as you start to do that, that's where Selling in Alignment then generates inquiries. And then we have, at the time of making this recording, we have a roughly 25% conversion rate. So generally 1 in every 4 people that come onto a call with me will end up buying some kind of a product service where they can level up their business.
Awesome. You mentioned your ideal customers there when you're talking about the high value, high end coaches on LinkedIn. What makes them so great to work with?
Do you know what? It's the mindset. I think, first of all, as soon as someone commits to paying a good sum of money to work with you, and so we're just releasing this program at the moment called the Black Belt Blueprint, and it uses the master method. So 6 steps delivered over 6 months, where we're going to create a campaign to convert low-paying clients to high-value, high-end clients. There's a mindset that takes place in a coach where they've invested a certain amount of money. For me, and what I've seen through the time of being in business, which is probably a good 18 years now, what I've really seen is generally when people invest larger sums of money, they are emotionally more invested. They're then going to put a great deal of effort, energy into having a transformation. Because for them, they're like, I'm fully invested in this. I've committed to this. Now I want to see it through. And so that's the first thing that really makes a great client, is the amount of investment that they're going to put in at the front end. So it's not like a bulletproof rule, but it's a general thing that I've seen, right? I've had customers in the past that have invested in a 12-month group coaching program through Master the Markets, which we ran, and they never showed up ever. They invested the 5K, they made a one-off payment, and literally we would call them and say, hey, where are you, right? Your subscription's running out. We want to serve you. And they're just like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. I've just been a little bit busy. I'm doing this at the moment. And they just forget. So it's not a completely bulletproof rule, but you will get clients. Generally speaking, what we found is the greater the amount of investment into themselves and their education, the more commitment they're going to have. So that's one element. And then another element of a great customer is that we're really meeting them where they're at. If we're talking the right caliber of language, right? And so this is why we talk about pricing and packaging, because that's a very, what we call early stage problem that coaches, consultants, service providers have. And so just before we came on this call, we're talking about the idea that some coaches can't articulate their value, right? So like the fact that, you know, some people struggle with that element of, yeah, how do I actually break down this offer? And so where I meet my clients and the type of language that I'm talking about is all of that. And I'm always doing listening. So my business mentor calls this process active listening, where I'm actually looking at the kinds of comments and things that my customers are dealing with at that level. Like my ideal client is already doing a revenue of around 50 to 60,000, but they're hit a ceiling of revenues, they've hit a capacity, and now it's time to massively scale that, 3 or 4 times. And the way we do that is by introducing high value, high end products, the easiest way to do it. But they have a certain set of problems. So they have a problem which is, I don't want to invest more time than I already am because I'm at capacity with my time, right? Or they have a problem around, hey, you know what? I've worked with a few consultants in the past who have said that they can do this for me and they haven't. And so where I listen to all of that, I then create content around that. And that talks exactly to their level of problem. And that's also then what creates an ideal customer for me, is someone that's able to read that, see it, and then engage with me.
I love it. So let's assume you've got exactly that person you've just described now is watching this episode going, wow, Rishi, you're amazing, because you are amazing. I love your energy and all that you bring to it. How do they get in touch with you if they were looking to find you now?
Yeah, so the very best thing to do to get in touch with me is I'm active on pretty much most social media platforms. And the very best tool that people can use to engage me, to connect with me, is my pricing calculator. So I have derived a very, very clever algorithm, which they actually go through. It's a 12-question quiz, which asks them questions on a scale of 1 to 10. And right at the beginning of that, they select the kind of coach or consultant that they are. And what it will do, this calculator is incredibly intelligent, because it will look at market rates, then it will look at the answers to the questions, and then it will actually show you as a minimum what you should be charging per hour. And a lot of coaches, consultants, service providers I work with, really interestingly, don't even know what their minimum hourly rate for coaching services should be. So this great calculator, very, very clever quiz, and I'm sure you'll drop a link to it at the bottom of the episode, or somewhere where people can access it. If they click onto that, they will actually be able to just go through a series of questions, and it will show them at the end of it, and it will send them a report around, this is your minimum hourly rate, this is what you should be charging as minimum. People can look at that and just question, hey, you know what, when I'm coaching, am I asking for that as a minimum, right? And that's a really great place to start. And that's a great way to kind of get into my world and understand what I'm all about.
That's great. So we will put a link to that pricing calculator in the description below the video. If you could leave us with one special message to the world, like just something that I suppose has great meaning to you, or something around your vision, or something you'd love to see in the world. I don't know. I put it over to you, but one special message, what would that be and why?
Yeah, as a service-based business, I want to see you as the owner really get what you deserve in terms of a lifestyle. And that for me really comes down to the prices that you're charging. And that comes down to being able to charge your worth. I want to see that shift in the world where coaches, consultants, service providers step into this unmessable level of power of really charging the rates that they're worth, earning as much as top-end lawyers, dentists, doctors, top-end consultants, surgeons in this space. I want to see the coaching profession make the money that it deserves for the incredible services that it offers to humanity.
Rishi Patel, coach of coaches. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been really insightful and enlightening having you share your wisdom, and I'm sure our guests will enjoy this as well. So thank you, Rishi, for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Stephen. Great to be on.